are people who are breaking the windows. There are trishuls all around. When that happens, we are all...
He claims his car came under attack while covering the 2002 Gujarat riots.
And we came out 50 meters from his residence. We are stopped. Suddenly our ambassador car is stopped and there are people who are breaking the windows with trishuls.
The incident is absolutely true. Except this didn't happen with Arnab Goswami at all.
Talk about secularism. I have seen hate from up close. And I know that group of people could have killed him.
My first reaction was a mix of amusement and astonishment because it seemed like someone was pulling out a very good act.
I don't remember seeing him at all in Gujarat at that time, but no, he wasn't there. I mean,
when that happens, we are all told to reveal the...
Arnab's bombastic claims busted by those who were actually on the ground. Should Arnab Goswami apologize for having lied about being attacked while covering the Gujarat riots?
So the first question that I want to address is, why are we doing this story at all? Well, it's the #1 trend online. Every single person talking about this for the very simple reason that a TV anchor who preaches from the pulpit says every night the nation wants to know, now caught in a situation where the nation frankly wants to know from him what happened. Because here you've got, and I'll just play that out for you from Assam, where Arnab Goswami is claiming that he got attacked just 50 meters off then Chief Minister Narendra Modi's residence in Gujarat while supposedly covering the Gujarat riots. Now, multiple people who were actually covering the Gujarat riots say that he came very briefly, well after the violence had subsided, and that no such thing happened with him. In fact, we spoke, and I'll play those reactions out for you in just a moment, to video journalists who were with the organization at the time that this incident took place. And remember, Rajdeep Sardesai, in his book published after the 2014 elections, describes at length what exactly happens. Every single thing, or most of what Arnab says is true, except that it didn't happen with him. It actually happened with another journalist. So Arnab, the nation wants to know, now that you've been caught out, will you apologize? Here's the story.
He is one of India's most famous journalists who claims to tell the nation night after night what it wants to know. But is this self-proclaimed conscience keeper of the country always telling the truth?
There are people who are breaking the windows with trishuls. It's 50 meters from the Chief Minister's house.
In this video, Arnab Goswami is heard talking about his experience of covering the 2002 Gujarat riots in Ahmedabad. This is at an event in Assam in 2013, where Arnab Goswami gives a first-hand account of what happened to him.
We came out 50 meters from his residence. We are stopped. Suddenly our ambassador car is stopped and there are people who are breaking the windows with trishuls. They are breaking the windows. All the windows are broken. It's almost as if there are trishuls all around, and I know this is very unsavory, but I must share with you the reality of life as I have seen it. When that happens, we are all told to reveal our religion. It's 50 meters from the Chief Minister's house. How it happened, I don't know.
He goes on to paint a very vivid picture of that one night in Ahmedabad in 2002.
He said, we are journalists. No, what is your religion? What is your religion? And thankfully, let me tell you, there was nobody from a minority community with us. But one of our people, we had our identity cards, press. My driver did not have a press card. And I was sitting in the front. I have an obsession with sitting in the front seat. I looked to my right, and I can see the look on my driver's face. When people talk about secularism, I have seen hate from up close. And I know that group of people could have killed him. He had a tattoo, he put a hair or something on his, like, one head, it's not a tattoo, it's actually just the imprint that you put, which stays with you. He showed that and we walked out.
But here's the truth. Arnab Goswami was not in Ahmedabad covering the riots.
Travel now on the other side of Daryapur's communal divide.
The incident that he so passionately talks about actually happened with Rajdeep Sardesai. Arnab Goswami has just lifted Rajdeep Sardesai's story and made it his own. The fact is that the attack that Arnab talks about did happen, but not to him. The fact is that Arnab was covering the 2002 Gujarat riots, but he was never in Ahmedabad. Now listen into Rupen Pawar. He was the video journalist with Rajdeep that night.
We went for a 2-cam shoot with the CM. So we reached the CM's interview, we got the interview. We finished around 10:30, 11. I think it was late night. And as we left the house of the CM and we were on our way out, about 2 to 3 kilometers out of the house, we were attacked by a huge mob. Like there were 300 people for sure. Rajdeep was sitting in the front seat, Gaurav and Nattu, who was the assistant, and me and the driver. There was 5 of us. So Rajdeep was in the front seat and he was trying to tell them that we were all, it was in seconds, we could just die in seconds.
Arnab and Rupen's versions are strikingly similar. There is only one crucial difference.
We had our identity cards pressed. My driver did not have a press card. And I was sitting in the front. I have an obsession with sitting in the front seat. I look to my right and I can see the look on my driver's face. When people talk about secularism, I have seen hate from up close. And I know that group of people could have killed him.
I don't remember seeing him at all in Gujarat at that time, but no, he wasn't there. As far as I remember, I don't remember seeing him. This incident happened with Rajdeep post the CM's interview, and it was a 2-cam setup, and we were 5 of us in all who went for this.
Even reporters who were there in Ahmedabad the night say they were attacked by a mob have all busted Arnab's lies. Gaurav Dwivedi was with Rajdeep in the car with him. So was Sanjeev Singh, who also says that Arnab wasn't in Gujarat when the incident took place. Nalin Mehta, who was also reporting on the 2002 riots, he too says Arnab is lying. Maya Mirchandani, another former NDTV journalist, too confirms that Arnab was actually in Delhi. The mask of lies has now been ripped off, and as Arnab Goswami came under fire, he sent his current employees to come to his defense. This is a tweet by Republic correspondent Prema Sridevi, who claims that Arnab and Rajdeep were covering the 2002 riots together. But even this defense is based on a lie. The picture, in fact, was taken a week after Rajdeep Sardesai and his team were attacked in Ahmedabad. The attack that Arnab claims happened to him. Now, the nation wants to know, will Arnab Goswami apologize for this lie? Bureau Report, India Today.
So far, there hasn't been any response at all from Arnab Goswami. But what's happened is that original video, which had been uploaded on YouTube, and remember, this is the video that went viral yesterday, has now been deleted. So by somebody who had access to the original clipping, they've gone to YouTube, and that video, when I try and click it, what I see is this video is unavailable. So what really happened in that instance? I want to show you what Rajdeep Sardesai told me a short while before we started the newsroom. Remember, he was at NDTV at that time, he was Arnab's boss, and also covering the Gujarat riots very extensively. He's written about the episode that Arnab is talking about in his book, The Election That Changed India, 2014. So most of the incident is true, except it didn't happen to the person who so bombastically claims it happened to him. Listen to Rajdeep. Joining us now to talk about this entire episode is the journalist who actually was in Gujarat covering the riots and whose car actually came under attack, Rajdeep Sardesai. Rajdeep, you put out that video. How did this video come to you in the first instance, and what are you making of this entire episode?
You know, to be honest, this was forwarded to me about 3 months ago by somebody, and my first reaction was a mix of amusement and astonishment, because obviously astonishment, because this is exactly what we had gone through and everyone knew about it in NDTV and beyond, in Gujarat also. And amusing because, you know, at the end of the day, it seemed like someone was pulling out a very good act. But, you know, it was disappointing at one level. I want to be clear, Arnab remains a friend of mine. I see him as a friend, a colleague. And it was just disappointing that he chose to do something like this. It was silly more than anything else. He just didn't need to do it. I want to leave it.
From what I've understood, it actually wasn't 50 meters away from the Chief Minister's office. So there's a lot of embellishment even in the claims. So even though he's appropriated your story, there as well the narration is not true to fact.
The narration of my story is there in my book 2014, The Election That Changed India, written in November 2014. It's there in the interview that the camera person Rupin Pawa has done today. He's in fact given a very detailed explanation of what happened. And I've always spoken about it pretty freely. It was 2 kilometers away from the CM's residence late in the night. And, you know, that's what happened. I was just wanting to set the record straight. I have no personal agenda in this. Honestly, I want to set the record straight that this is what happened. And let's not, as senior journalists, try and appropriate someone else's story only to embellish our CVs, because I think that's wrong, that's unethical.
No, and you've got also a situation where people in public life must be accountable to the same set of standards they expect of others. And I think you call this fikugiri. I think it's very important because you're expecting, preaching from the pulpit, the nation wants to know this, that and the other, and you're not following the same set of standards yourself.
No, I want to make it clear again that I think journalists do make mistakes. I've made mistakes. None of us are perfectionists, and I think we should have the courage to admit when we make mistakes. And I think that's part of life. Just as we seek accountability of others, we must seek of ourselves. I'm not going to stand here on a pulpit and say that, you know, I've never made mistakes. We all have. But I think once you make a mistake, the least you do is apologize, move on, so that there is a sense that maybe you've got it wrong. But this unwillingness to apologize troubles me, because then you send out a very wrong signal, particularly to the profession and indeed to the world of whom you hold such very high, expect and demand such very high standards.
They put out a picture. So one of their editors put out a picture saying this is the crew that covered the 2002 riots. That's from, what's the truth about that?
Look, the picture was taken more than a week after the riots took place. The riots were in those first 3-4 days. There were 3-4 reporters then. I want to leave it at that. I'm happy that they could go and meet all those people in that picture, ask them what happened. There are now witnesses. It's just absurd. I don't want to be low level.
At the very least, an apology is in order?
It's for each individual's conscience to decide what they believe they want to do. At the end of the day, I think in some small way, we as news anchors have also become public figures, so we are expected to perform to certain standards of account.
Absolutely, you know. Do unto others what you expect others to do unto you, and follow the same standards that you expect of others. Thanks, Rajdeep. Okay, joining us now for reactions on this story, and you know, the least that's really expected from anybody who says the nation wants to know and that other people must be held accountable, is that he must be held accountable to the same set of standards. Remember, the story has gone viral and how lots of traction everywhere, people really expecting a simple response. Sanjay Hegde is an advocate of the Supreme Court. He called me saying he wanted to play amicus curiae. I wonder what he intends to do. Also with us on this broadcast is Swati Chaturvedi. She's a renowned columnist. She's written a scathing piece for Daily O. R. Jagannathan is the editorial director of Swarajya Mag. Tavleen Singh is one of India's most widely travelled journalists. Welcome. I want to go across first to Swati, because you've written this very strong piece. Do you think that the very least that Arnab should do is to come out and apologize, say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry?
Ranadik, first of all, it's very brave of you to have this debate, because everybody's kind of shying away from it. Second of all, I want to offer a very tiny mea culpa here, because in my piece, where I've, as you rightly said, been very scathing, I made the mistake of, I don't know how it happened. It was written 40 minutes off of getting a line in there, which is written by another journalist who I don't follow. But I immediately corrected. I went on Twitter and we've changed the piece. So, if that's the kind of standard that we need to be setting. Now, this is not a mistake, it's a fantasy. What Arnab has done is a fantasist act. He wanted to be Rajdeep Sardesai. Now, this is completely unacceptable, because he leads editorial teams in Republic, in Times Now. I mean, really, what is going on? I mean, this is not a mistake, Rahul. It is a complete fantasy.
To embellish your own journalistic track record by appropriating an event that happened to somebody else. Tavleen Singh, you know, you're one of India's most widely travelled journalists. What are you making of this? Swati is calling this a fantasy. You know, most of it is true, except it didn't happen to the person who so bombastically is claiming that it happened to him. Tavleen.
I said he's a fantasist. Rahul, I said it's a fan.
For a start, I think it's wrong for...
He's not a journalist.
Tavleen?
Yeah. For a start, I believe that it's wrong for journalists who cover conflict to boast about it. It's part of our jobs. Nobody should say, oh, I was there and I got a mob and the mob came. How many times has this happened to people like me who've been in journalism much longer than you guys, right? I don't think it's something to boast about in the first place. In the second place, what he's really done is do something that you cannot apologize for, because you can apologize for a mistake, you cannot apologize for a lie. So actually it's something that maybe the press council or whatever body is in charge of this kind of thing should take up. But since, you know, already the mainstream media is under a lot of suspicion from ordinary people ever since social media started, he's done something that damages us all.
Sanjay Hegde, you said that you wanted to defend Arnab Goswami. Is this even something that can be defended at all?
I didn't say I wanted to defend him. I said that there were certain points that could be said in his defense.
Okay.
Like, on the record as it now stands, it is very certain that he was not there. It is very certain that the incident also happened, and that is reportage, that such an incident happened very close to the then CM's house. But after all, where did he say it? Did he say it on air? He did not say it on air. Did he put it out under his byline? He did not. He must have been speaking to some Rotary Club in Upper Sibsagar or something of that kind. He was among his own folk. He let down his hair a bit, and he more than embellished the truth. Well, a man is entitled to be a legend in his own mind. But beyond that, I think we can't press this case much too far. It all depends on what kind of standards you hold journalists to. Do they never tell a lie in private life or before a captive audience?
But this is hardly private life. You're saying this in public, and R. Jagannathan, especially at a time when every single act of every single person is being held accountable, and that it must. And I must say this, when we do a broadcast of this nature, we realize that the same set of standards and more will be applied to us, and I'm fully ready for it. So, Jagannathan, do you accept this argument that this is every journalist can be a legend in his own mind, or is this just make-believe and a total farce? Jagannath.
See, I think the profession has much to apologize for, given the way large sections of it have conducted themselves in the recent past, and more especially with the kind of journalism that is being practiced now, where a chief anchor becomes the prosecutor, judge, jury and executioner. So in his own mind, I think this kind of anchoring and where the journalist becomes the news rather than the news being the news is actually making the journalist larger than life. In this kind of situation, I would not be surprised if you have some kind of delusional awareness about what your own experiences are and mixing them up with somebody else's. So I think this is actually a wake-up call for the kind of journalism and the kind of things that are happening, which is not just happening in one channel but in many others as well. I think what probably Mr. Goswami needs to do is probably first provide an explanation of why this happened. So before we talk of apologies and other things, if you are able to explain this a little more coherently, I think we may probably see whether it was talking about some other incident and he mixed the two up or what, I don't know. But I think
there's a lot
certainly
of
I think
passion,
it does not
there's a
speak
lot
well.
of emotion, there's a lot of certainty. There's no doubt. He doesn't say this happened to the teams who are working with me at that time, or this happened to a former colleague of mine. He says that it happened to me. Well, since this happened, the story, as I said, has gone viral, and there are a whole bunch of memes. I just want to play out some of those. The hashtag Arnab did it. Now, all manner of things being attributed to Arnab, from covering World War I to covering tsunamis to covering the Kargil war. Internet, of course, has a mind of its own. So here's a quick look at some of the memes that have now gone viral. Remember, the hashtag Arnab did it really has, and this is really, someone becoming a butt of jokes. And in some senses, unless you step out, unless you explain, unless you apologize, this is most likely going to happen, especially given the fact that you are constantly taking apart people and then not applying the same set of standards to yourself. Let me do one thing. I'll show you, because this is not the first time a journalist or a narrator or an anchor has been caught out in this fashion. There have been multiple global precedents as well. So let me give you a quick update on what happened internationally under similar circumstances, and how journalists had to actually do much more than just apologize, and definitely not allowed to get away with deafening silence. Here's the second story.
Radio traffic makes clear this routine mission is running into trouble.
We took fire on the way in. We currently are not under fire. I say again, not under fire, but we look for some type of security.
In 2003, American TV network's Brian Williams became a star as he reported from Iraq. He reported from mid-air as 3 US Chinook helicopters came under fire from Iraqi forces.
Suddenly, without knowing why, we learn we've been ordered to land in the desert. On the ground, we learned the Chinook ahead of us was almost blown out of the sky. That hole was made by a rocket-propelled grenade, or RPG.
We were in some helicopters.
After he came back, Williams altered the version a little bit. While his report claimed that the helicopter ahead of him had come under attack, on David Letterman's show, the star anchor claimed that the Chinook that he was in was fired upon.
2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47. We did. We landed very quickly and hard, and we put down, and we were stuck.
Please welcome Command Sergeant Major Tim Turpak and Brian Williams.
In fact, he was even felicitated with a US military veteran during a basketball game at Madison Square in New York.
During the Iraq invasion, U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major Tim Turpak was responsible for the safety of Brian Williams and his NBC News team after their Chinook helicopter was hit and crippled by enemy fire.
After the story aired, some US veterans took to social media to complain, forcing Brian Williams to apologize.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago. I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft. We all landed after the ground fire incident and spent 2 harrowing nights in a sandstorm in the Iraq desert.
Williams, in fact, was suspended by American TV network NBC for 6 months over his false story. But Williams isn't the only international journalist who paid the price for his fabricating the truth. In 2012, CNN's Fareed Zakaria was briefly suspended after acknowledging that some part of his columns were plagiarized. In 2011, 4 Australian journalists working with Channel 9 were sacked for faking reports about the search of a murdered teenager. And in 1981, the Post fired Janet Cook, the reporter who fabricated an article about an 8-year-old heroin addict after her work was exposed as fraud. Cook has not worked for a news organization since. Now an Indian news editor has been caught lying. The big question is, will Arnab Goswami also take responsibility and apologize?
So international precedent there laid out for you. We really want to leave it to our viewers to decide what they make of this entire affair. The truth is out there. You decide whether or not somebody can get away by not responding at all or by appropriating somebody else's story. I want to thank all our guests for joining us on this broadcast. Sanjay Hegde, Swati Chaturvedi, Tavleen Singh, R. Jagannathan. This is an important story. It needed to be told, which is why we've done this. And I seriously hope, as I end this part of the newsroom tonight, that if we ever make a mistake, we have the grace to stand up and say, we're sorry, we made a mistake, and move on from there by accepting that we were wrong. To just take away somebody else's story is totally, totally not done.